If heroes are meant to inspire us to be better people, then villains are meant to be warnings to keep us from being our worst selves. On this show, we've discussed many of the heroes present throughout the comic industry and the lessons that could be learned from them. But since these lessons wouldn't have nearly the impact they do if they weren't given a clear opposition, I think it's time we start to really dig into the villains and see what makes them tick. And I could think of no better place to start than with one of the most arguably popular villains out there, Venom. For those not aware for whatever reason, Venom is, by far, one of Spider-Man's most popular villains, and also my personal favorites. He's a member of the alien race comprised of malleable organic goo called symbiotes, or the Clintar if you want to be that guy about it, who can attach themselves to various hosts and give them enhanced abilities and powers while also draining or controlling their host if they so choose. The symbiote that would eventually become Venom was originally bonded to Spider-Man during the first Secret Wars event in 1984. And before anyone corrects me on this, I know he wasn't technically Venom's first host in 616 continuity, but for the sake of simplicity, not going through the character's entire complicated comic history, I'm starting with this. And yes, we're also going to ignore the whole Deadpool war at first, which caused it to go insane thing, because it's never mentioned in any Venom storyline I've seen outside of that moment, so it's easily one of those continuity snafus that we're just collectively pretending never happened. Now at the time, Spider-Man didn't realize the suit was alive and just thought it was a snazzy suit that gave him all kinds of cool upgrades, so he took it back to Earth with him. Eventually though, it turns out that not only was the suit alive, but it wanted to control Spider-Man's body and permanently bond with him. This didn't sit well with Spidey for obvious reasons, and he eventually managed to remove the suit by force by exploiting the suit's weakness to sound waves in the iconic bell tower. While Spider-Man thought he successfully got rid of the suit, it turns out that they found a new host in Eddie Brock, a ruined ex-reporter who hates Spider-Man for seemingly ruining his career. The rejected symbiote finds the perfect home for its hatred in the kindred hatred of Eddie, and they form the classic villain known as Venom, who has all of Spider-Man's abilities plus knowing all his secrets and an immunity to his spider sense. Now the characters had a long, complicated history from there, with a variety of new hosts including Mac Gargan, who was honestly pretty forgettable. Outside of a few cool Thunderbolt and Dark Avenger storylines, he never really did anything to note. And Flash Thompson, who had an awesome series that you should all totally read. Again, I could go through all the different hosts and all that, but I don't want this video to be 3 hours long, so for the sake of simplicity, we're going to focus on the original and current Venom, Eddie Brock. Now for all the character's popularity, I feel like he's often misunderstood, and everyone's kind of forgotten what made him such an interesting and compelling character to begin with. Most people kind of start and stop with his cool design and the violence he often employs. The movie did not help. And I can't say I blame them, it's what caught my attention after all, but there's honestly a much deeper subtext to the character that often gets overlooked. Because for all the cool looks and the one-liners and the gritty violence, both Venom and Eddie's motivation boils down to one basic need: the need to feel loved. But how they go about finding it is incredibly self-destructive and traps them in an abusive relationship. Something people often forget about the symbiote is that it's essentially a spurned lover, or a bitter ex if that makes you feel more comfortable about it. Pretty sure I felt at least a few of your butt cheeks clench at the mention of the word lover. Anyway, the original origin story for Venom makes it more than clear that the symbiote, despite popular beliefs to the contrary, is not inherently evil or ill-intentioned. It actually doesn't feel anything at all. It only learned emotion through its time with Spider-Man, where it learns how to feel. It also takes on some of Spider-Man's ideological beliefs. The symbiote actually wanted to help Peter be a better Spider-Man, and thought it was doing so by taking control of his body while he was sleeping to fight more crime. However, while the symbiote did learn more positive emotions of Peter like love and compassion, it also learned more than a few negative ones. This is due to the fact that it bonded to him during a particularly frustrating time in Peter's life. As a result, the methods it chooses to employ to help him start going beyond the already incredible violations of trust it's committed thus far, getting more aggressive with each day. When Peter finally starts to notice what's going on, he goes to Reed Richards to confirm that the suit is, in fact, a living being. Spider-Man immediately panics at the realization and tries to remove the suit, but the suit panics as well and tries to quickly make their bond permanent. The suit ultimately fails, and it learns the one feeling that would define its motivation and reason for being from that point onward: rejection. A rejection that comes from the person it loved and thought was good. A person who rejected it the minute he found out it was alive, seemingly rejecting it for the crime of existing. While that feeling may not have reflected reality, it's certainly a feeling that would lead to what Venom is known for: his quest for vengeance. It initially tries to get revenge by bonding once again to Peter and forcing him to do its bidding, but this fails once again, concluding in the famous bell tower sequence. part of that same sequence that most people forget about is that while the symbiote still wanted revenge against Peter, it didn't want to kill him, and actually saves him from that same tower almost immediately after being rejected again. Despite being rejected twice by its first love, the symbiote can't convince itself to finish him off. That is, until he meets his second and most well-known host, Eddie Brock. Now, say what you will about the movie adaptation, it does get one thing right. Eddie Brock is a loser, and he pretty much has been throughout the entirety of his life in the comics. He comes from a neglected home with a mom who died due to complications during childbirth and a father who continuously acted cold and indifferent as a result. He spent much of his childhood trying to earn his father's approval and affection, but to no avail. The only time his father seemed to care at all was when he prevented Eddie from going to jail for accidentally killing a kid during a drunk driving accident. But he spent much of his own wealth to do so, increasing the animosity between the two even more. He eventually manages to establish a new life for himself in New York City as a successful journalist and even gets married. Things seem to be looking up for him after he managed to score an exclusive interview with a man who claimed to be the serial killer known as Sin Eater. However, it turns out this man is just a compulsive confessor, and the truth is revealed when Spider-Man catches the real Sin Eater. Eddie is fired in disgrace as a result, and his wife divorces him, leaving him once again alone, unloved, and with nothing to show for all his efforts. A loser, hated by everyone and wanted by no one. He turns all his loneliness into hatred as he becomes obsessed with bodybuilding Spider-Man, blaming him for ruining his life. But nothing can free him from his emptiness, and he decides, as a member of the Catholic faith, to go to church to pray for forgiveness one more time before committing suicide. Fortunately for Eddie, this turns out to be the same church where the symbiote has been rejected yet again, and the two bond, forming Venom. And this is where things get interesting, because while the symbiote already learned about rejection and hate from Spider-Man, its bonding with Eddie and feeling his hatred for Spider-Man is what actually drives the symbiote over the edge into the murderous monster they would become. But make no mistake, their relationship is hardly one of unity or equality. It's actually incredibly one-sided, with the symbiote simply using Eddie to get their revenge on its first love. While the symbiote definitely picks up a few negative personality traits, it very quickly presents itself as the dominant force in their relationship. And make no mistake, it is a relationship, and it's anything but healthy. Now, there's been a variety of reasons given over the years as to why the symbiote chose Eddie and why they've stuck together for so long. There's a whole thing with Eddie having pancreatic cancer and the symbiote feeding off the adrenaline for a while. But the one thing that remains consistent is that it stays with him because of his hate. It's what the symbiote feeds off of, and it's what makes him stronger. But Eddie's reason for hating Spider-Man changes drastically throughout the years. It starts out as pretty straightforward villain motivation stuff, with Eddie wanting revenge on Peter for allegedly ruining his life. But once he bonds with the symbiote, Eddie finally gets what he's wanted all his life: love and companionship. Someone that accepts him and wanted to be with him in the form of their bond. However, it's pretty clear from the beginning that Eddie has been and always will be the second choice. The symbiote only wants him for his hatred while secretly still wanting nothing more than to be with Spider-Man again. And Eddie is very aware of this. This is a fact that Spider-Man actually exploits during their second encounter when he tricks the symbiote into leaving Eddie by pretending to want to bond with it again. So what starts out as a hatred for ruining his life turns into a deep-seated resentment for being what the symbiote actually wants, once again failing to earn the real love and affection Eddie desperately desires. But as time passes and the two continue to be Venom, even becoming an anti-hero for a time, Eddie's hatred for Spider-Man begins shifting from a deep-seated resentment to an absolute necessity to keep the symbiote. After all, the symbiote only cares about Eddie as long as he hates Spider-Man, so if he stops hating Spider-Man, what good is he? So the hatred becomes an addiction, as Eddie is desperate to feel wanted and accepted by the only creature that'll give him anything resembling affection. Even if it comes at the price of belittling him and reminding him of his worthlessness at every turn. So if Eddie is the abuse victim, constantly doing and saying whatever he needs to keep their partner from leaving, the symbiote is the constantly toxic manipulator, whether it's trying to be or not. See, the symbiote picked up on Eddie's weakness pretty much immediately, which is what made him the perfect host. Not because he was an ideal candidate, but because there would never be any real struggle of power. Eddie might think he and the symbiote are working together, but it's the symbiote pulling the strings from the very beginning. The more Eddie becomes addicted to the companionship, the more the symbiote abuses their relationship, berating Eddie more and more for being the weak loser that he's always made himself to be. But to make sure that he still remains loyal, it also gives him that warmth comfort that he so desperately yearns for as well. Now, I can already hear some of you jumping in saying that the symbiote has been a hero in the past and is a hero again even now, so it can't be the horrible serial abuser I'm saying him up to be. But here's something I want you to consider before you apologize for its behavior. Even when the symbiote is trying to genuinely help or be on the good side, it can't help but to manipulate its host. It's done so from the beginning. It thought it was helping Spider-Man by taking his body for a ride to stop crime, but then acted out of fear and tried to force itself onto him when he realized what was happening. It slowly but surely took more control over Peter the closer it got to him. But it did so with the intention to do good. Now, to be fair, after the symbiote is quote-unquote cured of its madness and rebonds with Eddie, they seem to have a healthier bond than before. But during the most recent Venom run by Donny Cates, who just gets the character more than most writers to be honest, it's revealed that Venom is still manipulating Eddie by implanting false memories and was responsible for triggering a false cancer diagnosis, so that Eddie would have no choice but to stay with it. The symbiote claims that it did so because it was scared, that it's always scared, and that might very well be true. But intentionally or unintentionally, it also did it so that it would never lose control over Eddie and his actions. So what that leaves us with is a partner who has been and always will be extremely manipulative, regardless of whether or not its intentions are for good or ill. And a victim who will always cling and come back to the only one who can give him what he wants, even if it's at the price of everything that gives life actual meaning and joy. I'm not going to lie, I've always thought of Venom as a metaphor for giving in to our darkest demons and impulses. A warning against letting your darker side roam uninhibited. But I realize now that Venom is actually the representation of a toxic partner who will never change, even when they want to. When the symbiote first bonded to Spider-Man, it learned emotion and what life was like, but it only knew how to reach out through manipulation, directly or indirectly. It thought it was doing good and helping, but still knowing that what it was doing was clearly wrong, as demonstrated by the fact that it would keep its actions a secret from its host. When its first partner rejects it for its attempt to help, it panics and lashes out in an attempt to keep him in his life. With Eddie, it only got worse, as trying to help turned to trying to destroy, and it used its new host to try to show Spidey up at every turn. But even trying to do good again after getting better still leads to the symbiote lying to and manipulating its partner in an attempt to keep them together. Because at the end of the day, some people will never change in the way you want them to. They may try for a while or simply pretend to, but they will never stop being the toxic, draining, parasitic partners that they are. Sometimes the toxic partners will legitimately try to change, be better, and they'll legitimately want to. But there comes a time when you have to realize that your idea of positive change and theirs may never be the same, and denying that fact will only cause incalculable suffering. Breaking that bond is hard and painful. Breaking from that partnership can leave permanent scars on your mind and body. But to do anything else is to do yourself a disservice, because things will not get better, and you will never be happy with them. Now, this isn't to say that you should reject any partner that has a different life viewpoint or does things differently than you do. If you're in a healthy relationship, these are things that you can realistically find a compromise to so you can grow and be stronger from the experience. But some partners will always try to keep control. They'll tell you it's for your own good or that you're trying to do the right thing, but it's all a lie to convince you that you're nothing without them. Because with partners like Venom, it's never about love. It's about control. And it's about keeping you addicted to them so they can keep that control. And until you break free from that toxicity, using any and all resources at your disposal, as long as it's not illegal, you will always be trapped in a permanent bond of hate.